So about 4 weeks ago, I put up a video letting you guys know that I was feeling burned out. And I expressed in that video that internally there was some conflict going on within me. And I think it's finally time to turn on the camera and open up to you guys. And truthfully, there's no easy way for me to say what I am going to say in this video. The contents of this video may very well upset some people. It's very possible that what I'm about to say could hurt my reputation. It could be bad for my channel. And there are some people on my team who I trust very much who honestly, they weren't entirely sure it was appropriate or necessary to be honest about some of the things that we're going to talk about in this video. Not that they wanted me to lie, but that maybe it just wasn't smart to talk openly about some of the things we'll discuss here. And, I pondered that. I really mulled it over. And I thought to myself, maybe they're right. Maybe I'll just come back and I'll put up some mental health vids or some TRT vids and just try to get this baby rolling again. I've missed being on YouTube. I've missed communicating with you guys. This channel's a big part of my life. However, the idea of coming back and not talking about what's been going on since I've been gone for anyone who might happen to care, it made me feel terrible. I was like, what do I have anyway on this platform if I don't have my integrity and my honesty? And I was like, I don't feel like I have much. The only thing I can do well, potentially, is being myself. And a lot of people on this platform don't do that so well. And I'll be damned if I don't do that to the best of my ability. 4 weeks ago when I made my video saying I needed a break, I did mention ever so carefully in the video that I wasn't sure I wanted to be sober again. And in a number of ways, it's extremely painful and difficult for me to admit to you guys that I did drink again about 3 weeks ago. And I was afraid to admit that. I was so incredibly scared to be open about that because I have, for lack of less dramatic words, preached and supported sobriety and my own sobriety for years on this channel. I had almost 21 months of sobriety, and I drank again. And I didn't want you guys to abandon me for it. I didn't want you guys to judge me for it. I didn't want to lose what I have built on this channel, and I didn't want to possibly trigger a relapse in someone else. And so I thought maybe I should never say something, but I just knew that the fabric of this channel would completely disintegrate the moment I stopped being open and honest about what actually was, not perhaps what I thought would look better. Sometimes I put pressure on myself to look as good as possible. People write very kind and adoring messages to me sometimes. Even a channel my size, people do. They reach out and they tell me I'm an inspiration. They tell me that, my journey has inspired them in their journey. I've had people say I saved their lives. So when I drank again, knowing the potential risks and dangers that I put myself in by attempting to mingle in that world, I was just so afraid that if I told you guys, it would send someone out into a relapse, and then that could potentially be detrimental to that person. But then I remembered I'm not God. Then I remembered that all of you are in charge of your own lives and responsible for the choices you make, just as I am for the choices I make and the potential consequences and risks we embark upon when we do things that I did. And so I just want to say before I go any further, if your sobriety is still the most important thing to you, don't let my having drank again change your mind about what matters to you. I'm not going to live your consequences for you. If being sober is a lifesaver for you, do not give that up. And please accept my apology for how this video may have just affected you and your sense of self and or at least your motivation. I'm not God. I'm not some hero. I'm just a guy. But I do understand that some people look up to me. And I've gotten enough messages to know that a lot of people got sober because I got sober. And I am sorry for that. But I have to live my life, and I have to be open about my life. And now we're going to talk a little more about that and what's been going on since I left. And if you need to click away, and if you need to unsubscribe, if there's anything you need to do, I respect you and I support that. And I'm not going to beg for anyone to stay. But I certainly would hope that not too many people leave because of this if you feel disappointed. My goals are still to be as mentally healthy as possible and to be a good person, to do the right things. And whether or not I am playing with fire or whether or not I can end up being some anomaly in this world and I can do okay with this, I'll be open about it. And I'll be gentle and tender with you guys for the sake of, for the sake of my position on this channel and some of the things we've been through together. So what I think happened, which led to my drinking again, was pretty simple. It took me a while to pinpoint it, to sort of identify what it is that I was thinking and feeling that would lead to on paper, such a risky choice. When I got sober a couple years ago, I think subconsciously I put an expectation on that sobriety for what it would mean for my mood. I'm someone that deals with depression and anxiety, very severely at first and then cyclically since. But it's pretty rapid cycling depression. My psychiatrist thinks it might be unipolar, but at times it feels very bipolar. And so I thought to myself, if I get sober, shit better pan out for my mood. It would be worth it, I looked at alcohol as a problem based on my history with it. And I'm not taking back anything I ever said in the past about alcohol. My history points to a very bad relationship with alcohol. But I put this expectation on getting sober, and I didn't even realize I did it until I drank again. Getting sober, using a 12-step program, following suggestions, going to my doctor, doing all these natural treatments and remedies, things were supposed to improve to such a degree that it would make it all seem like it made sense, like it was the right thing to do. And in a lot of ways, it did feel like the right thing to do. And I really latched on tight. But what I found, despite being sober, as long as I was sober and doing the things that were suggested to the best of my ability, I was still struggling tremendously with my mood. And I was really having a hard time accepting that. I would go a couple weeks where I would do okay, 2, 3, 4 weeks where I'd be deeply depressed, suicidal feelings, obsessive thoughts, detachment, just despair. And then I would rise out of it. And then I would sink back into it. Sometimes this would be day to day, other times hour to hour. And occasionally I would get really, really fortunate and it would last 2 or 3 weeks. But I've never held on to mental stability in the sense that makes me feel confident about my future longer than 2 or 3 weeks. That's my record. And so this last time, I was coming off, about let's say 6 weeks ago, I was coming off the best stretch of mental health I've ever had. And I counted my lucky stars, and I felt so happy about it. And when it left me this last time, and it left very, very hard, something snapped in me. Something changed. I got my first legitimate case of the fuck-its that I've ever had in my journey of sobriety, this journey. I thought to myself, if I'm going to suffer anyway, if I'm going to be dealing with crippling endless rounds of depression and anxiety and despair and suicidal thoughts, what's the fucking point of being sober? Now, let me be perfectly clear. I'm not telling you that this was the right way to process or think. I am not telling you this is what you should do. I am not sure yet just how bad or how okay things might be. We're sort of in this weird limbo land right now. But that's the way I felt. Why can't I hold on to my mental health even for longer than a couple weeks? Mostly it's day to day. I've been sober for so long, I do all these things that are suggested to me by my providers and psychiatrists. I got very self-pitying. Just started to feel bad for myself. Because in a lot of ways, I miss the better times. I miss some of that world. I don't miss the consequences, and I don't miss the parts of that world that weren't going well. But I just assumed if I got sober and I did what was suggested in the 12-step programs, everything was going to be okay. And when I realized that it wasn't going to be so black and white and that there was still a lot of suffering to be had, something snapped in me, and I drank again. And it's been really interesting since that happened. Now, I also think I owe it to everyone who's in 12-step programs to know that me not succeeding in sobriety using 12-step programs is not a knock on 12-step programs. I made it longer sober there than I've ever made it anywhere. Did I always feel like something was missing? Yes. Was it never quite going as well as I'd hoped it would go? No, it wasn't. But it still has changed a bazillion lives, and it still could change yours if you're involved. I am not the deciding factor as to whether or not it works or it doesn't work. I could have worked it harder, but I also did work it as hard as I ever have. And something I've had to do since I've been away from YouTube is try not to punish myself too intensely. It is what it is, and I need to figure out what I'm going to do from here. And I guess they say in 12-step programs, this is apparently research. Now, chances go I'm going to discover that alcohol will do what it's always done, and I will eventually need to get sober again. And they say it's every alcoholic's fantasy to be able to learn to control his drinking and drink like a gentleman. And I guess I'm just another one of those people that needs to figure that out. Now, I've been supported enough by the people in my life who love me in the sense that they understand it's my journey and this needs to be what it needs to be. Nobody can put in the work that's required in sobriety but the very person who's getting sober. And if there's even a shadow of a doubt, then that person, in a sense, I guess, has the right to explore that. However, and this is what my wife said to me when I told her I thought I wanted to drink again, I am responsible for how this goes. If it goes fine, then fine. I'm not putting that out of the realm of possibility. I've heard enough stories now of people that have been able to return to normal drinking. But if it goes very poorly and it deeply damages my already fragile mental health and my life falls apart, I'm responsible for those consequences, and I have to accept that. And that's what my wife said. You know, I think a lot of people expected that Jesse was going to just stand in front of me with an ultimatum and say, hey, you drink and it's over. And she's not that way. I mean, she's a ride or die. She loves me to the bitter end. But what she did say was that if this messes things up, it's on you. Otherwise, you're an adult. I love you. And if this is something you need to see, how it goes, then I support that. But be careful, because like I said, if it goes wrong, it's on you and you have to live with the consequences. And I really appreciated that. And in general, I've appreciated most everyone's response. Now, a lot of my 12-step family, who I still love and adore, they got a little intense and scared, and they reached out to me at great length, and I would never be mad at that. I totally understand. And I thought I would wait until I knew what was happening more before making a video. I thought if I needed to wait a month or 2 months or whatever, I thought maybe I would have discovered if this was going to work or if it was not going to work. Because one thing I've already figured out since I started drinking again, and I've drank a handful of times in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and one thing's for sure, I still have to figure out how to be okay in my own skin, in this brain that God gave me when I don't have anything in my system. I still wake up the next morning. I still need to figure out how to be okay. The depression's still there. The anxiety's still there. The tendency towards suicidal ideations are still there. Now, like I said, I have gone up and down, but that's one thing that became clear instantly. Now, I'd be lying to you if I said that a couple of these times drinking, it's been very carefree. It's been very laid back. It's been fun. And I've certainly appreciated the fact that it's just been different. When you're in a downward cycle, when you're in a downward spiral, those suicidal thoughts, that depression, that anxiety, that tightness in your chest, it's haunting, it's overwhelming. And, I guess getting a break from that was great. But those aren't the kind of breaks that will sustain me, and I still know that. Does it have a place in my life? Carefully. That's what we're going to figure out. And I feel like that a lot of people are going to judge me for that. And I just need to be true to myself and be respectful of anyone's opinion on that, because I guess I don't know yet. Now, there's this other thing that's going on right now in conjunction with this. Now, my doctor, I told her I was feeling squirrely right before I drank. She prescribed me low-dose clonazepam, which I believe is the generic benzodiazepine for Klonopin, 0.5 milligram tablets. She said she wanted me to take one in the morning, one in the evening, for like a week. She thought it could take the edge off of this angst I was having, this whatever was leading me into this potential relapse, and I was too afraid. I was just too afraid, which is kind of ironic because, with my history of alcohol, you'd think I'd be more afraid of that, but I was too afraid to try to take this low-dose benzo just for this short amount of time to see if it could help push me through. And I didn't. But I have since taken it, and something very interesting happened there. I might have to make a separate video about this, but I took the 0.5 milligram clonazepam, or Klonopin, I cut it in half, and I took one. And what happened after that was kind of nothing short of like a miracle for how my brain works. I've never taken Klonopin before, but for all intents and purposes, the shit made me feel pretty normal. Whatever normal is, 0.25 milligrams of Klonopin kind of makes me feel normal. And so I thought maybe it was a fluke. And so I took it again the next day, 0.25. And I kind of felt it wearing off a little bit, like 10, 12 hours later, so I took 0.25 in the evening. And for the last week, I've taken 0.25 in the morning, 0.25 in the evening. And it has made day-to-day life a lot easier. And which is both exciting and very scary, because my understanding of benzodiazepines is that they're highly addictive. They affect the GABA in the brain, much like alcohol. And you end up developing a tolerance. You'll end up needing more and more, and getting off them can be hell on earth, and there can be rebound symptoms. So I'm like, fuck, did I just stumble into the first thing that's ever normalized my brain in the last 4 years? And is it not something that I can actually use? So that's been really interesting. Now, my primary care doctor wasn't surprised that my brain worked this way. My psychiatrist does not like the idea of me taking a benzo every day, even low dose. He said it's a slippery slope. So apparently I'm slipping and sliding on every fucking slope known to the mental health game for this particular person. Sometimes I think this is going all right. I've had some very normal drinking experiences. I've gotten a bit drunk a couple times as well, where I was like, I don't think that's technically normal. But I've had a few that felt totally normal. And so I'm monitoring that. And now I'm not even sure how it's affecting my mental health, because I'm taking 0.25 this week at least. I'm taking 0.25 milligrams of Klonopin in the morning, 0.25 at night. All I know is my mental health is doing a lot better on the 0.25 milligrams in the morning and then evening of Klonopin than it was without it. So I have some decisions to make. And there's a lot at stake. And quite honestly, I've had a lot of good times this last week, but I'm not sure if I'm hanging on by a thread. It's weird. I'm like, okay, are things just going okay simply because I have low-dose benzo in me? Is this somehow replacing something that my brain can't do anymore? Am I going to be completely back in the frying pan if I stop? I don't know. So I started looking up and researching stories about benzos. I'm like, is there such a thing as taking it long-term, low dose? Does this help for treatment-resistant depression, which is my own? I really started also exploring the diagnosis of bipolar 2. I explored it with my primary, and then I talked to my psychiatrist about it. He would much prefer I take a mood stabilizer like Lamictal. So I have that prescription waiting at the Walgreens down the street, and I'm contemplating picking that up. But one thing is for sure. All of that aside, this whole experience has completely reignited the search, the quest. What do we do to get my mental health to a safer space? Getting sober and doing what I did accomplish one thing. It turned me into a more responsible adult person. It matured me, and it kept me focused on doing the right things. It did not alleviate my mental health problems like I thought, and that was a tough pill for me to swallow. Now, I'm assuming it probably would have been smarter just to start experimenting with psychiatric medications before going back to drinking. But that ship has sailed, and my job now is to minimize damage, be as careful as I can, and see if this thing can actually work. And then to be honest. I think that's the most important thing, is can I be honest? Can I admit to my innermost self that it is or is not working? Because at the end of the day, I just want to feel okay. I've always just wanted to feel okay. And I never meant to become like a poster child for feeling less depressed. And I feel like that's what I became on this channel. Like a puppet. I love you guys. And I just want to always be honest with you first and foremost. So I guess here's what I'm going to leave the video with. I'll leave it on this. 1, does anyone have any experience with low-dose benzodiazepines for anxiety, chronic anxiety, for treatment-resistant depression? Unless I'm misinterpreting how this is making me feel, which is not stoned, by the way, or drugged or anything, it just sort of makes me feel whatever this means, but normal. What are your experiences with benzodiazepines? I've heard horror stories. Do you think it should be one of those things that I take more as needed? Like no more than 3 times a week, so that 4 days a week I'm off, and that should hold off the dependency and the potential for a withdrawal. Please also understand that I'm going to run everything by my psychiatrist, and I just value your opinion so very much. And I want to hear from you, but I'm not like putting my mental health on you. If you need to share openly about how my drinking affects you, not to sound dramatic or to put it less grandiose, if you'd like to share your thoughts on that, if you have something to say, I accept that, and I will read your words, and I hope you can just not be too intense or be too harsh, but you're open, you're welcome to share. I've been open about my sobriety journey. I have no right to hide the fact that I'm drinking again. It's just, that's bullshit. And lastly, what are your thoughts on the Lamictal? Apparently there's a very rare rash, like 4 in 10,000, that can kill you. And so that was a really intense thing to hear. But if the bipolar 2 diagnosis, or at least some form of bipolar 2, is the case for me, apparently Lamictal is the way to go. I definitely know the way I was living wasn't working anymore. I feel that in my heart. I feel like that's what spurred a difference. Now, I am partially afraid that I've set a ball rolling down a hill that's a negative one, but I also think it started the exploration of what's next. And based on how I've responded to the Klonopin, I'm pretty positive that some type of medication is needed. I've always wanted to beat this natural. I've always wanted to overcome depression and anxiety natural, but I spin in cycles so fast. It's been so many years since my breakdown. I'm starting to think that's not possible for me. And so I've explored SSRIs and SNRIs, but if the bipolar 2 thing is a thing, then perhaps we should do the mood stabilizer. I have a lot to consider. And if this somehow ruins my channel, like if this experience ends up being so detrimental that I lose a lot of you and my momentum on this platform dies, and I no longer can be whatever I needed to be for whomever needed to watch, then I need to be a man and accept that. But I hope it doesn't, and I hope you stay with me, and I hope we work through whatever this is together. And while I can never promise that I'll always make the right choices or the best choices, I can at least guarantee you that I won't lie, and I'll tell you exactly what it is and what's going on, for better or worse. My goals are still the same. This is just where I'm at right now. So I want to thank you for your time. I think this is my longest video ever, but I didn't care about that. I was down to let it just run for as long as it needed to. I've missed you guys more than words can possibly say. You know, I've been putting up a video every day or every couple days for like 4 years, so to go essentially a month without making a video was really interesting. And I'm going to continue to put up content in whichever way I can on this channel. I'll try to still make it worth your while, and I'll try not to get too sucked into my own drama. There you go. I guess I'm back. Wow, that's like literally the first time I have just like vocalized everything that I've been thinking all at once. That was it right there. I hope I didn't sound like I was totally full of shit. All right. I'll try to be classy about updates and careful and mindful. And if this shit's not working, you'll know, and we'll get sober again. And hold on to your damn sobriety if it means something to you. You are responsible for what happens if it doesn't work, just like I am. I appreciate you so much. Bye-bye.